Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. My guest today likes to say she is the most collected unknown artist in the world. She helps create and curate the visual aesthetic of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Each year, she handwrites more than 3,000 signs for Jazz Fest, including the signs on the stages designating which artist is performing and the bright yellow logistical signs throughout the grounds. 2025 marks the 40th anniversary of her employment at the festival. Here to talk about all that and more is Nan Parati. Nan, welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you so much, because you know I love to talk.
Well, we're going to see right now how that works out. So more than 3,000 signs is what it actually works out to.
Yes.
You know, so there are what, 600 odd performances?
Right.
So you do the scripted signs that are all the stages.
Right.
You do the yellow signs that tell people where to walk and all that. I'm stunned that there are more than 2,000 non-performance signs that are out there at the grounds.
There are actually, because if you also think about all the craftspeople, I do all those signs. I do all, and if you think about also, and I count everything, the stage signs, but there's also the dressing room signs, and on the dressing rooms, it's not just one sign per band. It's you got the the header, whoever's playing, all that stuff too. So when you start adding it up, it gets to be a lot. Then there's golf cart signs. And then there's also a lot of emergency signs too. I'm fast. I'm faster than any computer. So when there's an emergency sign, I get to write that. So there's a lot.
So your job doesn't end once the festival starts?
No, indeed. I've never seen the first weekend.
Because you're still doing signs for the second weekend?
Right. Doing signs for second weekend, and also just all the things that you need to do to make sure everything goes well the first weekend.
So how long does it take you to get ready for the first one? I mean, how many weeks does it take you to do the bulk of those 3,000 signs?
So, I also do the other work. I'm, design the stages and art directing type stuff too. So I start on the whole festival officially here in New Orleans on the 1st of January for that. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't include all the sign writing. Sign writing, I guess I start about a month out. So I'm getting ready to start soon. When they give me the cubes, that's when I start on the stage signs themselves, and that's the big launch, is the stage signs. The
cubes, the scheduling cubes that show at what time and where everybody's performing.
Exactly,
which is typically released a month before the festival comes out.
Right.
So that's really when you
really
hit high
plunge
gear.
in, yes.
So how many other signs can you do a day then? I mean, you got to do.
I'm good.
Like 100 plus a day, huh?
Probably so, because people say, how long does it take you to make a sign? And it's 40 years and 3 minutes, because you do something for that long, you get fast.
But now your style has evolved on the signs. Like earlier on, they were kind of more, I think, simple, and in recent years, you've started accessorizing them with little swirls and little stars. And the lettering has gotten thicker. So I mean, it's obviously something that you're not just scribbling a name on a sign. You've put some thought into it.
And the signs talk to me too. It is not uncommon at all for me to finish a sign, and then the sign looks at me like, that's what you want to send out there? Yeah, you're right. Okay, sorry. And I do it again. I mean, they talk to me. I'm not really crazy. That's just how my life is.
So there are some where you do multiple versions.
Yeah,
of that same
few
sign.
Never really more than a second version, but yeah, and it happens.
So are there bootleg Nan Parati signs out there that people can find?
There are. Okay, there's two things. You mean bootleg the other people who have done it?
You're the ones that you do and that you discard. The ones that don't make it.
I get it. See, my parents grew up during the Depression, so I can't just throw anything away, so I keep those, and then I cut them up. If I'm packing up a sign to ship, then I'll use that as part of the packing material, or I use the backs, or I cut little pieces out and make that for the table sign. I'm crazy.
Okay, so those rejected signs don't get out into the world.
No.
Okay, it's kind of like a band. They don't let their demo recordings necessarily get out.
Exactly, right.
Unless there's a box set one day when you hear all the old materials. So
right.
Maybe you can put out a retrospective with some of your failed signs.
Well, I'm actually working on greeting cards right now, so that would be kind of a thing too. So that people could buy greeting cards with all the signs, not these signs, but things like that.
So yeah, and going back to the beginning. Because your signs very much are part of the aesthetic of the festival. I mean, people expect food booths to be in certain places, they expect stages to be in certain places, and I think they, at this point, expect those signs on the stages to look like they look. When you started off, what was sort of the guiding philosophy for what you were going to do with those signs? Like, or was there one, or was it just you just kind of this is what came naturally and I put them up there?
Yeah, what had happened was I was working over at Whole Food Company before Whole Foods Market, Whole Food Company on Esplanade Avenue as their sign writer, and Jazz Fest came over in 1995 and said, "Could you write stage signs for us?" So I said, "Sure," and I did. And then the next year they came back and said, "Hey, that was cool. Could you do it again?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Could you write parking signs too?" And I said, "Yeah." And before that, there was a guy named Roy Lands, was his name, and he painted all of the banners. And if you see old pictures of Jazz Fest, we had pretty small stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and they were all painted by Roy. And that was the only real signage. I mean, they had some just kind of hand stuff, but not really. It was just more scrawled. And so then I was the first, I guess, the sign writer to do the ones for the stages, and then the parking signs, and then it grew, and then it grew and grew and grew until we have an entire art department now.
Which is, yeah, again, it's one of the defining characteristics of the festival, is how it looks, I think. Didn't Bill Graham, the famous concert promoter from California, didn't he have suggest at some point that Jazz Fest needed some sort of look to it?
I think so. When it was, I think in the mid-90s or so, I think he said something to somebody, to Quint or somebody, about Jazz Fest not having as much of a look as it really could have had. And I don't really remember exactly, but I remember thinking, okay, all right, let's do that. And so that's kind of where it really, then I started. And everything, you know, back in the day, there's a photograph, and I should have brought it with me, but there's a photograph of the site crew, which is like 6 guys sitting on a truck. And that was how things were in those days. And of course it was fun. And Jazz Fest, one of the things I love about it is the evolution of it, that it started out Quint and George Wein kind of with an idea, and let's do this. And Allison Miner and all, everybody, and it just kind of coming together, growing, and all of it was such an evolution. And I'm so excited and proud and thrilled to have been a part of that, to be able to bring it to where we are today. Of course, there's a creative director, Louis Edwards, now, that when I design something, I bring it to him. And I also work with all the different departments, and with a cultural exchange pavilion, and we're doing in Mexico this year. What would you like that to look like? And they bring me images from Mexico. So everything with the Congo Square area. What would you guys like? And so we do the whole thing together, and then I bring it to Louis, and then after he approves it, we take it to Quint. So it's still very much on the ground, figuring it out. I love that. I just love that feel of Jazz Fest, the real festival family.
Well, Quint Davis, the producer director of the festival,
Yes.
he's often talked about how that festival is a handmade festival.
Yes.
And it is. I mean, literally in your case. I mean, you guys are hand doing these signs.
Yes. And even we have a studio, Stronghold Studios, back in 1996. A friend of mine and I, Bill Darrow, we started, as part of the Jazz Fest thing, we started a little studio in Mid-City on Bienville called Stronghold Studios, and we were the art department. We were building things in there, going out on the field and finishing them up out there. And then it grew into a real studio. We've now passed it on. I left actually Katrina. I ended up in Massachusetts after Katrina for part of the year. But then Bill, a couple years ago, turned it over to his son and daughter-in-law, and they are continuing with Stronghold. So our Jazz Fest art department office is actually at Stronghold, so that we're there on site. And we're supporting local, real live artists as well. We're doing musicians through the festival, we're doing local artists, and I love all that. The fact that it is handmade by real life people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Jazz Fest sign maker Nan Parati. Your story of how you came to do this is interesting. You mentioned it earlier, that Whole Food, the very early Whole Food company here in New Orleans, played a huge role in it. I think you in your early 20s, you had been living in West Africa for a number of months, and this wasn't a Peace Corps thing. This was
just me. I wanted to go do something that I didn't know how to do.
So you moved to a village in West Africa?
Yes.
What country?
Senegal.
Senegal. And you just showed up one day?
Just showed up. I knew about the village because a friend of mine who was in Peace Corps had told me about it. And so I just showed up. I had learned, I don't even know how I did it in those days now, but just a few words of the language, and showed up and said, "Hey, can I live here?" And they said, "Sure." And so I did.
Okay. And you hung out. What did you do there?
I just was there. I was the resident white person. They really and truly, and this was 1983, so they really had not ever. They had also had a Peace Corps worker years earlier, so I was the second white person ever in the village, and I just entertained them by being white, by being not just. I'm not talking about color of skin, but after I learned the language, I was talking to one of the older women in the village one day, and she said, "I figured this out." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Black people work, white people read." And I went, yeah, you're kind of right.
You were the example
Exactly.
of a white person that just sat around and read.
Right, but
That's
the
funny.
good thing I did that actually did contribute to the village was I became the woman who took care of the kids, because the parents were out there and working in the fields doing everything all the time, and so they would just leave the kids with me, and the kids taught me the language. The kids taught me so much, and I was able to herd them and make sure that they weren't getting hurt and stuff like that. So I did contribute a little bit, and plus just being entertaining by not being able to do anything else, because every time I tried to do any of the work that they did, I'd mess it up because I wasn't used to doing it, and they'd just go, "Oh yeah."
Well, the whole notion of just being entertaining and not really doing the work, that kind of applies to your early time at Whole Foods
Yes.
as well, right?
Yes, it does.
So you show up in New Orleans, you need a job, you go over to the Whole Food on Esplanade,
Yeah,
it was a little
the Whole Food Company, yeah.
Whole Food Company in Esplanade. You get a job, it was the produce department?
Produce department. I was great at talking to people, really bad at stacking vegetables, cleaning vegetables, anything else in the world, really bad. But I was really good at talking to people. So I got fired about 2 weeks in, and Peter
Peter, who was one of the early investors in Whole Food. Who
yes,
grew
and
the
he was
company.
at that time he was everything, and he said, "All right, you're fired." I said, "Okay, but wait, you need somebody in cheese, and I can talk to people, and you need somebody who can talk to people." All right, you can work in cheese. So I go to cheese. I get fired about 2 weeks later. Although one of the people I talked to a lot was Alan Toussaint, so that was cool.
Alan would come into the store a lot,
he was a
okay.
frequent cheese buyer, so that was very cool.
Okay.
And so then I got fired again. That was my second time getting fired. But the day I was getting fired the second time, the sign writer had just announced he was leaving. And I said, "That's my real job. I promise. I know how to do signs. I promise I can write signs." My dad was what they called in those days a commercial artist or a graphic designer. And he taught me, I spent his studio was in our home. So I grew up watching my dad work and him teaching me stuff and how to write and how to do things. And so I knew I had never done it professionally, but I knew I could do that. I said, "Please just give me one chance." "All right, this is your absolute last chance." So I became the sign writer and kind of took off. That's what really worked. That was my real job.
So you were doing like the signs that would be in the store windows saying this was on sale.
Yeah, and then all around the meat department, all the different signs. And I loved I love puns. So I did things like, there was a thing for day old bread, so I did a guy playing drums, and it was day old bread, things like that. So
was that like a Harry Belafonte?
Harry
reference?
Belafonte, yeah.
Did you have like Harry Belafonte on the sign?
Yes,
Oh my
I did
God.
that. Yeah.
All right, so there was a musical component there.
Exactly. So that's what I was doing, and I was painting murals on the walls at that point and doing all kinds of stuff like that. So that was my real job, and it turned into a real thing, which then led to Jazz Fest, which then led to if you ever can do this, you want to get to know Quentin Davis, because knowing Quentin Davis will change your life. Yeah, a few years later, and this is a true story, I didn't really know Quint at all, but I was on the field one day painting a banner, and I'm painting the logo, and I'm looking at a postcard with the logo, and I'm painting it, and he walked by and he said, "Hey, can you're just doing that off the postcard?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You know how to do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's cool." And then next thing I know, really and truly, I'm getting a call because they're doing, and there was other things. I was already starting to do things for the festival. It wasn't just that, but that was my real interaction with Quint specifically. But I was already starting to make things look kind of cool. And I got a call, and that we were going to do the inauguration for Bill Clinton, and he wanted me to design all the stages and do that whole thing. So that was my first serious job, and that was Bill Clinton's inauguration. He was doing the festival on the Mall, or whatever it was called. Yeah, America's Reunion on the Mall. That was it.
In D.C. Yeah,
in
right.
D.C. So I got to do that. And so jumping from okay, cool to okay, cool, and doing that, it was great fun.
Going from doing the signs at the window at Whole Foods to doing Bill Clinton's inauguration.
Exactly right. And then from there, Quint had me do stuff for Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett came to town a few years later, '93, and he was doing a concert at City Park, and they needed design. They wanted a whole Margaritaville thing. So I got to design all of that and build all of that. Have people, friends of mine. It was all so, again, evolutionary, having friends build all that. And Jimmy liked it, and and I ended up getting to tour with Jimmy Buffett for a while. And it was Quint Davis. You got God, you got baby Jesus, and you got Quint Davis. Those are the people you want to stay in good with.
Wow, going on the road.
They change your life.
Going on the road with Jimmy Buffett, that had to be fun.
Oh gosh, was it fabulous! Jimmy was so nice, such a nice guy, and very, very personable. So nice. Yeah, and plus just, being on the road with Jimmy Buffett, it's fun.
That does not surprise me. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Jazz Fest sign maker Nan Parati. The early evolution of the signage, it kind of came along, and just the point of Quint Davis, just you told a story one time about the level of detail that he gets involved with. There's that cutout of Professor Longhair that is atop the main stage.
Right.
And you guys, and it's made out of foam, right?
Right, it's carved from foam.
Carved out of foam. But Quint asked you guys to change it at one point because there was some little detail about Longhair's teeth that he didn't like.
Yeah, he didn't. He thought they just didn't look. I mean, Professor Longhair didn't have great teeth, but Quint didn't want him represented that way necessarily for all time on top of the festival stage. So he asked if we would remake that for improve his teeth.
Which is funny because that's way up on the top of the stage.
Yeah.
Hardly anyone can see it.
Quint cares.
But that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The level of detail that that Quint and really all you guys get involved with is very impressive.
Yeah, it's great. It's so great.
No detail escapes.
Yes, that's true.
You got to do all the stage signs, so you did the one when the Rolling Stones performed. There's a great picture of Mick Jagger in front of your sign on the stage there. So that was a big moment for you to see?
Oh, better than a gallery show. Mick Jagger in front of my sign. That's enough we need to say.
Now, there was a curveball with the Stones too, where you got at the last minute, y'all had to do like a door or something in the back of the stage. What was the story there?
We had this huge, all a brand new backdrop that they had designed, but we fabricated for the stage.
The backdrop for the Rolling Stones, because it was different from everybody else's.
Exactly,
it was their own backdrop,
right. We had
with the tongue and all that stuff on it.
Yeah, we had the Jazz Fest, and then we had to switch it out that night for the Rolling Stones, where they were on Thursday, but still. So we did that. But I found out just right before they were supposed to play, just a couple of days out, that Mick wanted a door cut in his backdrop, and it had to be a specific size. It had to be exactly 6'3" by so wide, and it had to be made out of this fabric, and it had to be made so they could just go through it without anybody knowing there. But this is just, and the way I found out was somebody came up Tag Richardson, the site director, came up and said at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, "Hey, did you hear about Mick's doorway?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, yeah, he needs it by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." "Okay, jump into action." "Cool. All right, great." So what does he need? And we did it. I found a seamstress to do it. I just so happened, thank you, baby Jesus, I had accidentally ordered the stuff that we would have needed for the door. It just, for something else, we ended up not needing it. But hey, we need it for this. Yay, it's here. We already have it. Great, we can do it. And the seamstress stayed up all night sewing everything together, making it all happen. And I have a friend who is the drum tech for the Rolling Stones, just coincidentally. And so we put it up, we made it happen, and then next day I texted him and I said, "Did it work?" And he said, "Mick never said a word. That means that's the best compliment you can get."
If Mick says nothing.
Exactly. If Mick says nothing, we're good. So yeah. So that's. And it's really interesting going back to the Africa story. I used to love when I was an exchange student to Germany back in the 70s, late 70s, and I used to hitchhike everywhere. And I also lived in Africa. And I think it was doing all of those things where you're constantly having to figure out how you're going to make this happen. This is an emergency, this is a disaster, whatever. You're hitchhiking. Lord knows all the things that happen to you when you're doing that when you're 19 years old. But anyway, I was always having to come up with immediate fixes for so much in life like that I think that's what set me up for this kind of life, because you're always finding out stuff, but I love it. It's what I love.
One of the other jobs you had was probably good training as well. You were involved with the One More Time production at the Toulouse Theater in the French Quarter.
I was.
You were charged with taking care of James Booker, the legendary and legendarily eccentric New Orleans piano player.
Yes.
So that was literally your job, to make sure that James got there for the shows, basically? I was the house manager. And again, I was way too young for that job. Only theater I'd ever done was on stage. I'd never been like a house manager. Right.
But I got that job. Who knows why? Because Russell Rock is so much fun, and he hired me to do that. And so that was, it turned out to be, we had a bar there, and James, Harry Connick Sr. had said that James could not be, he was supposed to be in jail for heroin, but he was able to be out as long as he didn't do heroin, he didn't do anything and getting in trouble.
Right. And Harry Connick Sr. was, of course, the district attorney at the time.
Exactly.
And his son, Harry Connick Jr., James ended up giving Junior piano lessons.
Exactly, and that was what, and you probably, I'm sure you know that story, it was James, if he did get in trouble and went to jail, that's how he got him out of jail. He would wake Harry Jr. up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Your teacher's here." And Harry Jr. would get up and learn to play piano. And yeah, James Booker was amazing and such a dear. And can you imagine, I had just moved here from North Carolina, moved here by accident, thought I was coming for 10 days, get off the train and went, "Oh wow, this is it." That's how everybody gets here, really. You get off the train and go, "These are my people, I want to be here." So I had been here in town in like 2 days. I didn't know James, I didn't know anything. And I get this job at the Toulouse Theater with the wildest people in the world, including James Booker. And what a way to be introduced to New Orleans. And that was all the, Lionel Fairbush, Pud Brown, Thais Clarke, all the people who were in that show that I got to see every night and rub elbows with and be part of their lives. And what a way to be introduced to New Orleans. I've had such a fun life.
And those folks, they were all legends of New Orleans jazz who played the traditional New Orleans jazz, did a great job.
Exactly.
So Harry Connick Sr. kind of gave you some advice, or as far as taking care of James, he was kind of directed you and said, "Oh yeah, you got to keep an eye on this guy and make sure he stays out of trouble."
Well, that's actually Russell Rock, the producer, told me that. Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Jazz Fest sign maker Nan Parati. You did a sign for Mitch Landrieu's office door when he was mayor, I think, right?
Yes, Mayor Mitch.
Mayor Mitch did one of those.
And now I still get to make signs for the book festival because because
Tulane Book Festival.
Yes.
Because his wife was the founder.
Yes, and so they just asked me. I'm going to make some signs for that next week too.
So you do the Tulane Book Festival. You do the signage for the French Quarter Festival. You do the Newport Jazz and Folk Festivals up in Newport. Yep. That's a lot.
I also do Saratoga. I did the Green River Festival up there. There's Springfield Jazz and Roots. I just picked up a festival in Evanston, Illinois.
Okay.
Yes. And there's lots of festivals.
You spend a lot of time at festivals.
I do.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, I have a very happy life. I don't see much of the festivals generally, but I have a really good time. I'm usually too busy. I missed Earth, Wind, and Fire last year. I really wanted to see them, and I missed them. I used to do the Essence Festival, when Festival Productions, and one of the kind of regrets I have in life is that I didn't spend more time out there. It's when you're young and you think nobody will ever die. So I didn't spend more time out there watching those legendary bands, who would play all dressed up. And I wish I'd spent more time doing that. But what was fun was going up in the top of the Superdome at night when everybody, Frankie Beverly and Mays and everybody was playing, and be up there and look down, and the entire Superdome would be doing like the electric slide at the same time, all in sync. And it was so cool to watch. It was so neat.
I watched it from the stands many years.
Yes.
But to see it from above, the bird's eye view had to be pretty darn cool.
It was very cool. Yes.
You did some stuff with the Pelicans via Irma Thomas. There was some Irma Thomas Pelicans connection. What was that?
Yes. Years ago, this woman came to me and she wanted a sign. So I make a lot of signs for people outside of the festival too. People come and request signs a lot. That really blew up during COVID. But even before that, I was doing that. And this young woman asked me if I'd make a sign that said, "What would Irma do?"
What would Irma do? Yes.
So I made her a sign that said, "What would Irma do?" And she picked it up at Jazz Fest, and we took it backstage. I think Irma was playing the gospel tent, and we showed it to her, and Irma was like, "What do you mean?" I don't think Irma found it nearly as entertaining as we did.
Right.
So Irma was a little, all right.
Right.
But that woman, her name was Mel Berry, and she now, I don't know her exact title, but she works with the Pelicans. And that sign kind of kept us, because of Irma's reaction to it, kind of kept us a little bit in touch. But years later, she contacted me and said, "Hey, would you like to do we would like you to do some work for the Pelicans. Would you like to?" Oh, heck yeah. So I just finished doing, I'm not even sure what I did. I mean, I know what I did, but I think it was for a flag for this year. And they also do a fan fest day where they have me come out and just make signs for people. And makes all the fans line up, and I just make signs for them and give them, and it's fun. It's
what
fun.
a cool souvenir to come away from the game with.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, your style, you've actually, to protect your style of signage, you copyrighted your font, is that right?
Yes.
So how, did you have to like do a description of it in the application for the copyright, or how did
I don't know, ask my lawyer. I have a lawyer, she did it.
So it is, so literally that font that people see on the Jazz Fest signs,
Yes.
that is yours
Those
now.
two, both, I have two of them. The one that, like you said, on the directional signs, usually on yellow, and it's a serif script. That one's called Fun Times Roman. Ta-da!
Did you come up with that name?
I did. I was very proud of that.
Fun Times Roman.
Fun Times Roman.
Okay.
The other one, the cursive, like for the stage signs for the artist names, somebody else came up with this, but I thought, and they only came up with it recently. I had to change it because it was so funny. Nanuscript.
Nanuscript.
Isn't that great?
Oh, wow. That's good.
So Nanuscript and Fun Times Roman. Those are me.
So those are your official fonts.
Yes, and my lawyer writes a fair number of letters to people saying you can't do that. And I guess I'm honored that people want, to copy it, but that's mine.
Well, it's your intellectual property.
Exactly, yes.
And it's kind of your livelihood.
It is definitely my livelihood, yeah.
Yeah, not kind of, it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, and I'm very encouraging of other people developing their own styles, but these are mine, and so I want to keep them.
You want to keep them. Well, and you sell some of your merch through Flirty Girl, I think,
Yes,
right? Is that right? Right.
Yeah. She's amazing. Of course, nobody can even ever talk about Lauren Haydell, and not say she's amazing, because she is really amazing. But she came to me during COVID. Somebody asked me to make a sign for her, so I made it. They took it to her, and the next day she came to the house and said hi. I have an idea. And so she said, here's what you're going to do. She wasn't bossy about it.
Right.
Here's what I think we should do. You should make signs. I'll sell them through the store, and you can, I'll pay you so much money. I'll keep so much money. And it blew up. That, as well as Festing in Place with WWOZ, because they asked me to also make the signs for them. And I make signs for OZ during their fundraisers. I'll make them for people. They'll order a sign, and then a portion of that goes to OZ. And so, yeah, between Flirty Girl and OZ, there's a lot going on.
And a little thing called Jazz Fest.
And there's Jazz Fest, too, yes.
And this little thing. Well,
Yes.
We've got a minute left here. Is this something you keep doing forever? As long as you can, you keep painting?
As long as they'll have me.
So the hands are still spry, still got it?
Yes, indeed.
My gosh. So do you have like a masseuse on site to get your hands ready?
Every once in a while, I'll find, if they have somebody else, they could.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's an occupational hazard, I guess.
Yeah, right. In fact, the president of Festival Productions has been telling me for a while, and I should do this, and I just haven't. And she said, you need to get those hands insured. And I just think that's a weird thing, but yeah, I guess it makes sense, because that is my livelihood, is these hands.
Just like a musician. Just like a guitar player.
Right, exactly.
But you do a different kind of music. You do it on the sides. So.
You're right, yes.
Well, Nan, I've been seeing your signs out there for 30 plus years, and they very much are a part of Jazz Fest. So I'm glad you're still doing it 40 years in. And,
yes.
And I hope you continue to do it for many more years.
Thank you very much. Me too.
All right. Well, my guest today has been Nan Parati, the Jazz Fest sign maker. I am Keith Spera. I'll see you again next time on Let's Talk.